Sometimes it takes a lifetime. I looked in the full-length mirror and patted my dress around my curves, quite different from the curves I'd once had. Those curved in. These curve out, if you know what I mean. I'd just washed my hair, so it was still nice and bouncy. My husband peered around me, trying to get a view of his collar so he could get his tie straight. I set it right for him, and we trudged out to the car. I was extra careful in my low-heeled shoes. I shouldn't, with my unsteady gait, I know. But one looks so underdressed without a bit of heel, and I'd be sitting most of the time, so I should be okay. It was to our great-granddaughter's wedding reception we were going. It was quite grand, and because of our seniority, we were treated like rare and precious porcelain. The two young ones were a delight to watch as they held hands and swanned around the room, greeting everybody, looking back at each other with so much love. How wonderful to be so young. The bridegroom insisted he wanted us to meet someone special. His Nana, the senior-most member of his family. She'd been briefly married to his great-granddad, and he'd got along very well with Nana as a boy. And though Grandpapa died and Nana remarried, they'd stayed close. He wanted us all to meet and to become friends since we were all great-grandparents. He said he'd bring her around to us, and it was a relief to me that I didn't have to go teetering through the hall on those heels looking for some old lady. He bounded off, and in a while I saw him leading his Nana across. She was tall and held herself erect, perfect hair and gleaming nails, dressed in a simple burgundy pantsuit which looked magnificent against her translucent skin. A string of pearls glowed palely at her neck. She must be his grandmother, I thought, or she married a much older man, for her movements had the confidence of a younger woman's. She looked posh and stately, floating in a bubble of elegance. My husband hauled himself out of his chair, and so did I. Even at a distance, she seemed to warrant such a gesture. She was subtly made up, muted lipstick, blusher, and a hint of something around the eyes, making me wish I'd made more effort myself than just pulling on my dress and pushing on my shoes. She approached with both hands extended, and as I stepped forward, she exclaimed in an enthusiastic voice, "What a wonderful, happy day this is for me, and for you too, I'm sure, to watch these two young things start off on their joyful journey together." "Hello, hello," nodding at my husband as her hands were still entwined with mine. "I'm Serena." She must have felt me start because she looked back at me. I explained quickly. It's not a common name, and I knew a Serena once when I was a young girl, but that would have been well before your time. "Oh," she said, "I've never known another Serena. Where was it you grew up?" So I told her. Her face went still as she gazed at me probingly. "What's your name, my dear?" I told her, and she put her hands on my cheeks and gazed deep into my eyes and said in a voice filled with awe, "Little Helen, I can't believe I'm seeing you again after all these years." Tears filled her eyes and overflowed, and she clasped me tight to her pantsuited bosom. I just stood there like a sack of potatoes, more completely gobsmacked than I could imagine. I made an effort to pull myself together, but not with much success, I confess. I belatedly introduced my husband, and the two young ones were just over the moon with delight. Who could have imagined we'd already be old friends? This was too precious for words. We settled down in a comfortable trio, or at least the other two seemed comfortable. She was the warmest and most generous creature and patted me lovingly as if she were my big sister. She had so many memories and recounted them in such a funny way that my husband was gasping with laughter. There wasn't a spot of my childhood mischief that she'd missed. It was just a warm blast of nostalgia. But I was still dazed, still trying to wrap my head around it. Looking at this vivacious, glamorous woman, full of energy and barrel loads of charm, and trying somehow to merge that with the old memories I had of Serena. The two were just not coalescing. They were oil and water, north and south poles on a magnet. The two Serenas just couldn't be brought together in my head. It was almost 60 years ago I'd known her, but could it possibly be the same person? I was totally and utterly and most convincingly flabbergasted. You see, growing up, our neighborhood wasn't what anybody would have called plush, but Serena's family was particularly badly off. We all got by on less, they got by without. Everyone helped, but no one had much to help with. She was 2 years older than me, a quiet, mousy girl with dull brown hair in 2 stringy plaits, her clothes and shoes always on the verge of falling apart. I'm not being snooty, mine were only marginally better. She spoke softly and rarely, never laughed, never drew attention to herself, and nobody gave her the time of day. I was a chirpy, enthusiastic kid and took part in every school activity. Drama, debates, choir, sports, book club, art appreciation, marching band, library volunteer, history club. You couldn't start a new society, but I'd join it. And at the risk of sounding immodest, I was a raving beauty. Lustrous brown hair, perfectly arched brows which never needed to be shaped, animated face, and slender and curvy in all the right places. We walked to school and back together, Serena and I, for we lived on the same street. But we were too different to become true friends. We chatted, mostly me doing the chatting and Serena doing the listening, or dropping an occasional word of caution in my madness. She never seemed to have any stories of her own. She must have finished school 2 years before me because for all her personal dullness, she was academically bright. I myself finished school and took myself off to college. Life became hectic and studies, marriage, career, babies and grandchildren filled the various stages of my life. I lost touch with Serena. We'd never really had much in common. She was too reserved, I was too much of an extrovert. The brutal truth here is that I never even thought of her. In the decades that followed, I'd sporadically get news of her, mostly to say she was getting married, or divorced, or remarried, or widowed. It became a kind of joke. Her how manyth marriage was this? Had she reached double figures as yet? Did she still wear white and have church weddings? Or was it hop in and out of a registry office in a pale lavender suit and a taxi waiting with the meter ticking? Vicious, I know. But there were 5 or 6 marriages, so you can't blame people for talking. Nobody from the old days ever met her, but news would invariably filter back. And you could depend on someone to ask, why on earth would so many men want to marry her? Nasty, very nasty. But she was still catching and marrying men when the rest of us were putting our teeth into a bowl of water at night. I maintained a politic silence out of a sense of loyalty. But even I was shocked by the sheer number of marriages and remarriages. This wasn't the trial room at the local dress shop. What on earth was the matter with her? Plus, she was older than me, as I said. And I can tell you, I'm no longer any raving beauty, even if I still don't shape my eyebrows. And if anyone mentions the word slender in my presence, I feel slightly sick, so please don't. So the unavoidable question had been, how was she still reeling them in? I had the answer to that now, didn't I? The ugly duckling and the swan, or the creepy caterpillar and the butterfly, had nothing on my two Serenas. She was beautiful and charming and the furthest thing from her former self. And it was completely unfathomable. We met often after that, and I heard all about her life and all those marriages and the difficulty of holding on to her dignity knowing people were laughing at her. But they weren't in her shoes, were they? I flushed with guilt, but was also grateful I'd kept apart from the crowd. One has to admire what she's made of herself and how she kept the faith despite all the backsliding on the journey. And how she looks. I'm just amazed at how she looks. I don't deny it one bit. When you look at her, you don't notice her age at all. Only her warm and loving nature, her kindness and generosity, and you can't help being enveloped by it. She admires the stability and solidity of my life and what I've made of it, and waves away my moans about my disgraceful rotundity, describing it as a reflection of the happiness I've been so fortunate to enjoy all these years, and so never to begrudge it. So, after these many long years, little Helen and Serena have finally found each other again in the strangest way, and really become best buddies after all. Sometimes it just takes a lifetime. An afternoon at the card tables. Arey Pebbles, is it true you've got a deep pockets donor and all your money troubles are over? I took Chotu to the club yesterday for tea and Colonel told us, I'm very upset with you for hiding this wonderful news from us. You're a bad girl, Pebbles, said my Satyam Bua. Pebbles was immediately furious. That Colonel is a right blabbermouth. We all agreed to keep quiet until we actually received the money. But he's gone and jumped the gun, and with his parade ground voice, the whole club must have heard. She looked ready to box his ears, tiny as she was, and Sharmaji stepped in to pacify her. Pebble-ji, why you are taking so much tension? Now cat is out of bag. We did not say, but Message and I also heard. At Bluebell Bakery. No details, not even amount. Only your worries are over. But we have decided we will still support you. You are doing miracle in clinic. So good work. We can give our little help, no? Now Pebbles looked properly alarmed. That Colonel needs a good horsewhipping, if you ask me. This is exactly what we feared. It's not such a deep pockets donor as you called him, Satyam. Or that our worries are over, whatever you and Message heard at Bluebells, Sharmaji. We still need to collect funds. And whether we now can, after that fool Colonel has made his loud-mouth announcements, is yet to be discovered. Thank you for saying you will continue to support us. We would drown without our local donors. She positively wept over her cards as if they were the worst hand she'd ever been dealt. Of course, the big question on everybody's mind really was, how much? True to form, Message was the one who asked. Incidentally, I don't think anyone can recall her name anymore, perhaps not even her husband. When they first came up here, Sharmaji introduced her as his Message, and that became her name. Shant ho, Pebble, and tell ki how much you are getting from secret donor. Nobody was even pretending to play anymore. Even Mr. Braganza, who had become so silent after Mrs. Braganza departed, lifted his eyes from his cards and stared. Pebbles threw down her cards in disgust. The figure is not so large, see, but he's committed to give it to us every year for the next 5 years. It took a lot of hard work, but I finally convinced him. The tension I experience every day, worrying how to pay the doctor and other staff wages, that's somewhat taken care of. All the running costs are still to be covered, so you lot better start countering the narrative when you hear it henceforth. Discreetly, and with a well-manicured index finger, she traced a number on the green felt of the card table. We all burst into applause. I gave her a hug. That's fantastic, Pebbles. And while I'm here, if I catch that colonel again, I'm going to knock him back a few paces on your behalf. And what's more, I commit every penny of today's winnings for your Hill Clinic. Everyone immediately agreed to that, and my Bua even said it was the first bit of sense she'd heard from me. High praise indeed. These 5 families have been friends for decades. Their numbers have been painfully declining in recent years, and every time I come up to visit Satyam Bua, my mother's aunt, there are 1 or 2 fewer of them. But they still meet regularly and keep each other's spirits up. Mr. Braganza signaled the end of the topic by picking up his cards and knocking them on the table, and for a while they played seriously. Then Message announced, there is excitement in school board also. We have great hope for twin sister who want to study doctor and lawyer. And we are hoping the results are good that they can join college of choice. Uncle Mohan snorted. Don't be such an innocent Message. You've been telling us how smart they are, but even if they get 200%, they can't just walk into any college. Those days are gone. You know that too well, Message, since you run around the most to get admissions for them, and still you say these silly things. Mohan, Message works very hard to get all her charges into college. Those 2 girls are brilliant and very hard-working. And what big dreams! God knows they deserve a chance. Chotu isn't half as clever, and he got into college, so why shouldn't they? Burst out Satyam Bua even before Sharmaji could spring to his wife's defense. Uncle Mohan immediately apologized, and Message accepted it with good grace. And no one bothered about my hurt feelings, so I protested loudly. I worked hard to get where I am, Bua, but it's true, I must be a half-wit to keep coming up here to visit you when all you ever do is insult me. She gave me an affectionate rap on the wrist with the fan she always carried, and I held out a moment before saying sanctimoniously, I accept your apology, which just earned me another rap, not so gentle this time. Bua mentioned that her students at the convent were coming along nicely too. She taught fine arts, watercolor, oil painting, and reverse painting on glass, which is quite a remarkable skill. She used to teach embroidery, knitting, crochet, and lace making, but the girls weren't interested in those arts anymore. Uncle Mohan announced he'd been for a round of golf on Thursday. Meera auntie gave him a warning look over her spectacles, but he didn't notice, and I started counting under my breath. 101, 102, 103. I'd not even reached 7 when he burst out, The greens are an unholy mess. Wasn't like that in my day. And I suddenly discovered a fascination for my shoelace, which earned me another subtle tap on the back from Bua's fan. Everyone stared intently at their cards, and Uncle Mohan went on like a steam engine, huffing and puffing through his complaint. They'd retired him as groundskeeper, saying it was a burden on him at his age, and put in this scoundrel of a chap at half his age and twice his pay to do 1/10 of the job, and he couldn't complain, or they'd think it was sour grapes, which it most certainly wasn't, as the greens were an unholy mess, which anyone with the least bit of brain should be able to see. Sharmaji, the inveterate peacemaker, requested his help to go outside for a while. He needed some air. Uncle Mohan was immediately all concerned, and the rant was stopped mid-torrent as the two old men supported each other out of the room. Auntie Meera made to apologize, but no one would have it. He was quite right about the greens, though they were all tired of hearing it. Bua tinkled her little bell, and Ram Singh was instantly beside her. He accepted the detailed order for the coffees and teas attentively, as if it were any different from the hundreds of other times he'd received it. No order for me, as if I was still in the nursery and in short pants. So I requested a double whiskey on the rocks, having sidled carefully out of range of Bua's fan. Ram Singh gave me a crisp nod, both of us clear that no such beverage was expected. He had the tea laid out in minutes. Bua had made my favorite deviled eggs, and Pebbles had brought her famous avocado and pickled celery salad. Auntie Meera had brought her delicious lemon and poppy seed biscuits, which she said was strictly for me, so though we put them out on the table, no one touched them. I didn't object. More for me was my eminently practical stance. Bua's sandwiches are renowned. The bread is sliced so thin, it's almost transparent, and the crusts tidily trimmed away. A waste of good bread, but oh, so delicious, like little puffs of cloud. She taught Ram Singh to slice each store-bought slice evenly in half. And I tried it once, so I can tell you it's no mean feat. A citrus tea cake with spirals of candied orange peel rained on a stately old cake stand. Tiny cocktail potato bondas came freshly fried from the kitchen to fill the pretty dish next to the cutlass bowl of coconut chutney. We all prowled around the table seeking our personal favorites. The old china plates were covered in fine veins. They have a fancy French name, but I call them character lines. I love the feel of them. It's like holding history in your hands. The pale blue tea napkins were edged in exquisite lace, handmade by Bua herself, of course, the like of which you could never match. The whole experience was otherworldly. They went back to their cards. I sprawled on a sofa as the afternoon faded, thinking how like stepping back in time it was to come up here to be with my mother's Bua. Like the mountains surrounding us, the characters were statuesque, busy at volunteer work even in their 70s and 80s, and giving no indication of stopping. As the evening darkened, Ram Singh arrived on silent feet, switched on the twin chandeliers, and melted away soundlessly. I wished I could bottle the essence of the evening and save it, so I could take a whiff anytime I wanted and be transported back into this room with these charming people, the curved-legged card tables, the tapestry-seated chairs, the wafer-thin sandwiches, the old but irreplaceable lace lampshades shedding their warm glow over a kind and considerate friendship undimmed by years of togetherness. That essence, it would be priced above rubies. The kind man. It's been a long, long week. Longer than when Mum broke her hip and was in terrible pain, but they couldn't operate till the effect of her blood thinners was reversed. Longer than those hellish first months after Dad retired. Longer than the time since my sister's wedding, when everyone teased me I'd be next, and that still hasn't happened close to 30 years later. I've dressed carefully, polished my shoes, washed and brushed my hair into smoothness. Though who in this house ever notices me unless they want something? And stashed my only one lipstick in my bag. I can rub some on my cheeks for a color boost. I look so pale from always being indoors, and I do so want to make a better second impression. I'm the youngest of 4 siblings, all married and gone to their busy lives of husbands and wives and children, leaving me here with the aged parents. I didn't grudge it at first. I was happy to look after them. I volunteered. But I didn't know it would swallow my life, my youth, my energy, and turn me into a shambling old grouch before my time. No one ever came forward, you see. I had to plead for help and was made to feel like a whiner. Even convicts get time off for good behavior. But despite my excellent behavior and matchless service, there seemed to be no end to my imprisonment. I just wanted a life too. But that was top of no one else's priorities. So I instituted a weekly off. Every Friday, or any other day of my choice, if I gave enough notice for them to schedule, one of the siblings has to arrive before 9 a.m. and stay till 9 a.m. the next morning. I don't want to know the roster. I'm not interested. Just be there, one of them. And I won't step in to help earlier than 9, even if I'm home, which I usually am. Initially, they plagued me with useless calls right through the day. Till I said, you call me for anything short of a crisis and you can just stay on shift 48 hours. Learn to decide. I did. It caused a major racket when I tabled my demand. But thank heaven I had the wit to do it. Now it all works smoothly. Since I have my day off, I'm happy to serve the rest of the time. And since they have to do that one day every so often, they appreciate me the more. Last week, I'd gone off as usual. I had a busy schedule with many errands in the morning, a grilled sandwich, cake and hazelnut coffee for lunch, stop in at the library to change my books, and the big shebang was a music concert in the evening. After that, I planned to dine at Shanghai restaurant. Or maybe a kati roll if I got seduced by the smoky aroma emanating from Nawab's. These are my 2 favorites. My head was still zinging from the lovely music, all old and familiar, and a very inclusive performer who often directed the mic towards the audience and encouraged us to sing along. It had been great fun. I felt part of a musical community as we all belted out those old songs, roaring unabashedly into the auditorium and rattling the aged rafters. My large shopping bag was full of the day's efforts, and my small handbag slung cautiously crossbody. The shops were closed, and the bustle was mostly us theatre-goers emptying onto the street. If I noticed the kids skateboarding at all, so late at night, it was only peripheral. They caught my attention only when one of them snatched my crossbody and skated off into the dark. I cried out, but in seconds he or she was out of sight, and I was left standing there foolishly with my shopping in my hand. No money, no credit card, no phone, no house keys, which didn't really matter as I had no way to get home since I couldn't pay for my bus ride. Nobody paid the blindest bit of attention to my small cry for help. They may not even have noticed. It was over so fast. The back and sides of my neck burned from where the strap had been yanked off. I had to sit down for a while. I just didn't know what to do with myself. I'd never felt so helpless. I literally didn't have a cent on me. How was I to get home? Forget the dinner I'd been dreaming of all day. I didn't know any phone numbers anymore. They're now stored in that tiny phone and flown out of my brain, leaving space for other important matters. Though for the life of me, I couldn't think what matter could be more important than that at that precise moment. The street had emptied and gone silent. I was sitting on the cold bench, feeling scared, I'll admit it. I looked at my watch and realized I'd been sitting there almost an hour. I was hungry and tired. It had been a long day, and my neck ached. I should have been home and in bed by now, but I still didn't know what to do. I'd missed the last bus home. I knew that. Should I take a cab, explaining I'd pay at home? Could I walk home or to the home of one of my siblings? Everything was too far, and I'd have to lug my shopping bag, which seemed heavier every time I thought of it. I was trying to sort it out in my head when I felt a hand on my shoulder and looked up, bewildered. It was a man, gentle-eyed. He said he'd noticed me sitting alone in the dark and deserted street as he drove by and been concerned. So he'd stopped. I hadn't responded to his honking, he said. I hadn't heard it, I replied automatically. Yes, he said, he'd realized that. So he'd got out to check and seen the blood on my collar. My hand reached instinctively for it and came away wet, the whole area stinging again now that I was aware of it. He had such a kind face that I wound up blurting out the whole story about how my bag had been snatched and I didn't know how I was to get myself home and I'd missed the last bus and I had no money and couldn't remember any phone numbers. And how was it those children were out so late? And I needed to cancel my credit card, though luckily I had a very low limit and had used some of it today already, so they wouldn't get much out of it. Only disrupt my life and… Really, I was babbling too much. He listened patiently, then went back to his car and returned with the paper bag. He'd bought himself some sandwiches and fries for his dinner and offered to share them with me right there on the bench and just wouldn't listen to my protests. So we sat there in the soft darkness and shared his dinner. It was so kind of him. Then he insisted he would drop me home. This was his usual route home, though that day he was much later than usual, which turned out to be a good thing since he'd been able to help me. He picked up my shopping bag, light as a feather in his strong, solid grip, and escorted me into his car. I think I was crying. I must say in my own defense that I'm not normally so pathetic. But last Friday, when I was robbed in that shocking manner, I just fell apart. It was more than the theft. I know that now. It was shock, the violation, the helplessness, the feeling of being completely alone and unsupported. Who's there to look after me? That more than anything else, I think. He offered me a tissue from a box in his car and tactfully left me alone a few minutes while he found a bin for the remnants of our sandwich dinner. He drove me home, waving away my apologies. He put on some music so the silence wasn't intimidating. He spoke about himself. He was a bachelor and worked in engineering. I told him about my parents and my Fridays off. He counseled me to always have an emergency stash of cash on my body or in another bag, and some phone numbers memorized or stashed with the cash. He wasn't superior or preachy, just terribly kind. And soon I was home and on the pavement, waving him off with many, many thanks. It was only as I saw the red tail lights shrinking into the distance that I realized I didn't even know his name, let alone anything else. How was I ever to repay his overwhelming kindness? So a week has passed, and my plan is to sit on that bench from early evening and look out for him every Friday evening for as long as it takes. He'd said it was his regular route home. I don't know the make of his car, of course, but I'm hoping he'll look out at that bench too and will stop if he sees me. I just want to thank him properly. Does that sound like a plan? A bit hopeless, even to my own ears. But my only chance. So I'm just going to have to take it. He was a very kind man. Inside, outside. From being a person at liberty to come and go, eat, sleep, work and play at my own volition, I became prisoner number 37986. With no control over my life. My instinct was to fight the jackboot that stomped on me, to resist. That would have been the end of me. Fortunately, Saroja adopted me and saved me from myself. I did not want to be adopted. I raged against her interference, as I called it, but she persisted, seeing me through those first terrible days and nights which were much worse. Then the first terrible weeks and the first terrible months until I finally began to accept my situation and the long road ahead. She made me eat when I'd rather have rejected the foul food we were presented. I had to keep body and soul together, she warned me, and I couldn't afford to be fastidious. Eat. So I realigned my upturned nose and ate. I couldn't bear the rough, scratchy clothes we were issued. Plus, I never wore blue. It depressed me. Be depressed and be done with it, she advised. The uniform was blue and I'd have to wear it. Thick, hot and uncomfortable in the damp heat? Learn to live with it, for there's no alternative. Why must I bathe only at a designated time every day and no matter what, not again? Why were yoga and exercise mandatory? If I wanted to become fat and unfit, who else's concern should it be but mine? There wasn't a single mirror in the whole place anyway. It didn't matter, she said. I must bend and twist and breathe as instructed. I couldn't see the sky or a tree or hear a bird or a stray dog. Why should this matter, you ask, since I'm not exactly a sky and tree kind of person? I don't know, but I yearned for trees and skies in a most alarming fashion. She advised me to forget about them. Since I wasn't going out of this place for court visits and the like, skies and trees no longer existed for me. One of the first things you learn about prison life is that if you want any semblance of peace, you follow the rules. There's no real peace. You carry the turmoil within you, so how can you hope to escape it? But for even the most fleeting illusion of peace, you must submit and obey. Otherwise, you will be broken. I raged about my innocence, and she scoffed. All are innocent here. How many do you think acknowledge their guilt? And if some of us do, as I do, that only proves that we committed the act, not that we are guilty. When you're poor and uneducated and powerless and must accept the crazy willfulness of the world and know that your children will be born to equal poverty and hopelessness, you're already on the path of crime. You just don't know it yet. She didn't sound illiterate and powerless to me. Indeed, by the time I met her, she wasn't. She'd been in the system long enough to have understood how it functioned and how to make the best of it. There was an open university program, and she turned to it as to a savior. She compelled me to enroll too. Amongst the limited options on offer, it was the most normal. Naturally, in the circumstances, I opted to study law. It was an intense course. I had many years to fill. I ached for my former life. I raged and cried. I missed the small things. What to wear today, what to watch on TV, simple liberties I no longer enjoyed. I yearned for Chinese fried rice and pani puris and groaned to even think of what awaited me come mealtime. But I learned to do what must be done and to bear what must be borne. If I had learned these lessons earlier, I wouldn't have been there at all. But that's a road there's no benefit in furrowing. I studied with commitment, grateful for the distraction, and sat my exams and got my degree. I worked on my own case too, writing letters and making appeals, even though I knew there was nothing for me except to wait till I became eligible for parole. Still, I had to try. Roja had done all the learning too, but she never sat the exams. We became a team that helped other inmates. Neither of us wanted money. I just wanted an excuse to keep my gaze away from the clock and the calendar, which moved too slowly. And having had my life of small advantages outside, as it was known, I couldn't take cash from these poor illiterate women. The guards knew what we were doing. Admin knew, and even the lawyers. They often asked the women, "What do Saroja and Jayanti say? Is this their advice?" Of course, I wanted to widen the scope of our work, fight for our rights. I'm confrontational by nature. That's what landed me there. She restrained me. If we angered admin, she said, not only would we lose this freedom we had carved for ourselves, but the women would lose the guidance we gave them. Everything would be stopped. They could do that, I should know. And they would, if we made trouble for them. Everyone would lose. So, I pulled back my fist. Many is the time I offered to work on her case with her. Fresh pair of eyes, find a loophole. She always refused. Politely, but no. In all our years together, I came across her file only once. My instinct was to grab it and flick through it and see what she was hiding from me. But I forced myself to walk away. I told her she'd left it out and left the room. But what I'd already seen had been enough. I chewed on my thoughts, wanting as always to rush and ask her why. But it was none of my business, and she must have her reasons. So I zipped my mouth tight. I lasted 9 days. I was still trying my hardest, but she was sitting alone with no one around, and my bottled curiosity could hardly be contained. I dropped myself onto a bench across the table, still silent and struggling, avoiding her eyes. She reached out and put her hand over mine. I'll tell you, because I can see you'll go mad if I don't. But I won't change my mind. Why? I wailed at her. Why? Your file is so thin. It's empty. No papers, no appeals, no letters. I've been here half the time you have, and my file is bursting. You encourage me to make every attempt, but you make none? I don't understand, Roja. I just don't understand. You say there's always hope. Keep trying. Then why aren't you trying? Explain to me so I can understand. And so she explained. It was the saddest, cruelest, hardest explanation I heard in all my years inside. You have family and friends, she said. They might not visit you here, but they will accept you when you do your time and walk free. My past life is dead, destroyed, finished. For you, outside is a hope, a dream that will one day come true. You'll make a fresh start, a new life. You'll succeed, I know it. For me, outside is a terror I can't face. It frightens me. I've forgotten what it's like. It's been too long. I have no money, no friends, no family, nothing I can depend on, and nobody I can turn to outside. Nowhere to go, not even for a night. How will I survive? I'm there, I said. I'm your friend. You can stay with me. I'll help you. Her smile was sad and her eyes tired. I don't have the strength to adjust again. I'm too old. This is my life now. A life term is for life unless you earn a parole, and I don't apply for paroles, so I won't be granted any. I'm safe here. I'm fed, clothed, sheltered. I have a secure roof over my head. On the outside, I used to get up at 3 a.m. to fill buckets of water because that was the only time we got it. I can't do that anymore. Here I open a tap and the water flows. If I get sick, I go to the clinic. There are medicines, doctors. I have friends, I have companions, I have you, and most of all, something I never had before. I have respect and honor. Even from admin, they respect me. They know I'm using the system to my advantage, but they let me because it's to their advantage too. I can't have a fraction of this outside. I'd have to strive too hard to create it all again. It's too tough, Jay. I can't face it. I tried. I really tried to understand. How could one choose anything over freedom? It was an impossible concept to wrap my head around. I came to see that it wasn't an easy choice, even for her. But when she did the cost-benefit analysis, the evidence was plain. She was better off inside. And it was her life and her call, and I had to accept it. That created a rift between us for a while, I admit, but only on my side. And in time, I got over it. We still had many years of fruitful partnership together on the inside. Then I came up for parole and had to make my bid for freedom. I tried to get her to join me, but she was immovable. I hated her for her stubbornness because I loved and admired her so much. All this ran through my head as I awaited instructions from the priest. I was numb with grief. My thoughts were elsewhere, reliving past victories and triumphs, past joys and laughter, past sorrow and anger and acceptance, something more than mere friendship. Admin had contacted me. She'd passed gently in the night. She left a request for me to do her last rites. Would I be willing? Of course!